When I get these stories, I don't usually comment a lot, but when it involves violence, I always preach to you, don't resort to violence unless it's self-defense. Well, in this story, somebody got lucky. The call came over dispatch at 3:17 a.m. Mercedes CLS 550, disabled on a state highway, female driver, male passenger, no injuries. I had been driving a tow truck for 11 years in Texas. 3 a.m. calls meant drunks, teenagers, and women caught where they should not be. I had no idea this one was about to be my own wife. I pulled up behind the Mercedes at 3:42 a.m. with the amber flashes going. A sheriff's deputy was at the driver's door writing a report on his tablet. The driver was on her phone, a few feet off the shoulder, back to me, blonde hair pulled up in a knot with the silver barrette I had bought her for our 12th anniversary last year. The man in the passenger seat had the visor down and was pretending to read his phone. I knew the back of her head from 1,000 mornings on the couch. I knew the Mercedes because the title was in my glove box at home with my name on it, not hers. She got out of the car, turned around with the phone still at her ear. The color drained out of her face the second she saw the truck and the logo on the door. She said, "I gotta go," into the phone and hung up. She did not say hi, she just stood there. I walked past her without a word and hooked up the chains. The deputy asked her if she had a ride. She said her friend would call an Uber. The deputy looked at her, then at the man in the car, then at me. He had the whole picture inside of 2 minutes. I drove her Mercedes 38 miles to my company yard at 4:27 a.m. while she rode home with her AP in an Uber. I pulled into my own driveway at 5:46 a.m. with her car keys in my pocket. She was not home yet. The biggest mistake of my life happened in my own living room 47 minutes later. She walked through the front door at 6:33 a.m. with her phone in one hand and her heels in the other. I was on the couch with her keys on the coffee table and every light off except the kitchen. Her lipstick was smudged. She opened with, "Baby, I can explain. He is just a coworker. The car died." I panicked. I stood up and handed her the keys without a word. She took them and started crying. I asked her one question. "Who is he?" She told me a name I had never heard and a story that fell apart in under 90 seconds. He was from her office. He had been helping her with a project. The car broke down on her way home from a late dinner with clients. She had not mentioned clients, a late dinner, or a coworker named anything at all in the last 9 months. I asked her the question I had not wanted to ask. "How long?" She said, "It is not what you think." She said it again. She said it a third time. And then she said, 6 months. 6 months of her leaving in my Mercedes and coming home with lipstick on my back seats in a shade that was not hers. 6 months of me pulling overnights so she could have a nice car she had been using to meet another man. I do not remember standing up a second time. I just remember the sound my open hand made against the side of her face. She stumbled backwards against the arm of the couch. I put both hands on her shoulders and shoved her. She went down on the carpet with her heels still in her hand. Her lip was bleeding from where she had bit it when my hand hit her. She looked up at me from the carpet with her phone already halfway to her ear. I walked out of the living room to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. I knew what was about to happen before the first car pulled into the driveway. The deputies arrived 11 minutes later with the light bar going. I answered with my hands visible. I said, "Yes, sir," to every question while my wife sat on the couch holding a dish towel to her lip and telling them everything I had done. They cuffed me on my own porch in front of 2 of my neighbors. I rode to the county jail in the back of the cruiser with my hands behind my back. 14 hours in a cell with 3 other men, before they set my bond. The charge was assault causing bodily injury, a Class A misdemeanor in Texas, up to a year in county, and a $4,000 fine. My bond was $2,500. I was out by the next evening with a black plastic bag of my belongings and no idea how I was going to go home. My first court date was set for 22 days after the arrest. I hired a criminal defense attorney the same afternoon I made bond, a guy a buddy of mine had used 3 years earlier for a DUI. His fee was $4,500 up front. The DA offered a plea, 24 months of deferred adjudication, a 24-week battering intervention and prevention program, a $2,000 fine, 80 hours of community service, and a no threatening contact provision. My attorney told me to take it before the judge changed his mind. I took it. He read my statement, read my wife's statement, looked at the photos of her lip. Then he looked at me. His speech lasted about 4 minutes. He said a man puts his hands on his wife one time in his life, and it follows him into every room he walks into for the rest of it. He had seen men twice my size sit in the same spot and cry like boys. He did not care what she had done. In his words, the second I put my hand on her face, I had handed her a weapon that cut both ways. The anger management class was not optional, and it was not a box to check. If I missed one session, my deferred adjudication would get revoked, and I would sit in county for the balance of the year. I said, "Yes, Your Honor." He signed the papers, and the bailiff walked me out. My wife was not in the courtroom. She had filed the police report the morning of the arrest and never come back for any of it. She had not filed for divorce either. I did not understand that last part for another 41 days. 41 days after the judge signed my paper, a buddy from high school asked me to meet him for a beer after work. He had gone through his own divorce 8 years earlier. He asked me if she had filed yet. I said no. He leaned forward and said, "Do you know why she has not filed?" I said I figured she was trying to figure out what to do. He shook his head and said, "Hell no." He said she was not figuring anything out. She was waiting to build a case, save money for her own attorney, and pick a moment when I was too beat down to fight back. Every week I sat around feeling sorry for myself. She was running the clock on her own timeline. He asked me if I wanted her to walk out of this with half of my tow truck business, half of the house I had owned for years before I ever met her, and 2 years of alimony on top of it. I said no. He said, "Then stop reacting and start thinking." He asked me if I had ever heard of a voice-activated recorder. I said, "Only from TV shows." He said, "Buy one for $60 and hide it above the cabinet in the kitchen, where she made every phone call she did not want me to hear. Texas is a one-party consent state, and in the common areas of my own marital home, he was not worried about it. He told me to hire a private investigator inside of the next week, not the cheapest one, a guy who does adultery work in Texas divorces and knows how to get pictures that hold up at a deposition. He gave me a name off his phone. His last words before he paid for my beer were, "You kiss her butt for the next 2 weeks like you are the sorriest man on earth. You do her dishes. You bring her flowers. You apologize every night. You do not raise your voice one time. You let that recorder and that investigator do every bit of the work." I did exactly what he said. The voice-activated recorder cost me $56 at an electronics store. It was the size of a Zippo lighter and had 14 hours of battery life on the voice-activated setting. I slipped it above the cabinet over the stove before I left for my shift. The investigator cost me $2,800 up front for a 10-day retainer. He was 50-something, ex-sheriff, thick Texas drawl, yellow legal pad. He asked me 3 questions. Does she have a pattern? Does she have a vehicle she uses to meet him? Can you get me her work schedule without her noticing? I answered yes, yes, and yes. He would tail her twice a week for 2 weeks and deliver a photo report in a sealed envelope to my tow truck company mailbox, never to my house. No calls, no texts, no emails for the full 2 weeks, just the envelope on day 11. The first week I kissed her butt so hard, my voice sounded foreign coming out of my mouth. I made her coffee. I ran her bath. I apologized every single evening. I did not raise my voice one time. I did not mention the Mercedes, the passenger, or the deputy on the shoulder. She started smiling back in the second week. She started calling me babe again. She thought I had broken. Every night after she fell asleep, I pulled the voice-activated recorder off the cabinet and plugged it into my laptop on the couch with my headphones in. The first 3 days produced nothing but her canceling a dentist appointment and arguing with her mother about her brother's wedding. Night 4, I got what I was waiting for. She was on the phone in the kitchen at 2:14 p.m. on a day I was at work. Her voice, quiet, coy, the one she used to use on me. I miss you too, baby. I just have to be smart. I am saving. I have a little over $4,000 in my separate account right now. Another paycheck, and I can walk into a good divorce attorney and retain him. Then the whole thing starts. He is going to have nowhere to go. I love you. I cannot wait to be with you. She hung up. I saved that 9-minute call to a thumb drive, a cloud folder, and a backup drive I hid in a toolbox in my garage. Night 11. The investigator's envelope came to my mailbox at the company yard. I opened it in the front seat of the tow truck in the parking lot. 27 photographs. My wife and the guy from the Mercedes in 5 different locations, in a hotel parking lot on 2 separate days. Walking into a strange house. 2 photographs of them kissing outside the passenger door of the Mercedes in broad daylight. 1 photograph of them eating lunch at a restaurant holding hands. 1 photograph, the one I stared at the longest, of her head on his shoulder in the front seat of that Mercedes, with her eyes closed and a smile she had not given me in at least 2 years. All time-stamped, all geotagged, all signed by a licensed Texas private investigator on a cover page with his license number, the dates of surveillance, and a notarized chain of custody statement. I drove home that evening with the envelope in my glove box and smiled at my wife and told her I was going to grill chicken. My criminal defense attorney had given me a name for the divorce side of the house. She was a woman in her 40s with her name on the door of a firm that was close to my yard. I brought her a thumb drive, the sealed envelope, the original notarized cover page, 5 years of tax returns, 3 years of tow company profit and loss statements, the title to the Mercedes, and the house deed from before I was married. She read everything in 90 minutes. Then she read the investigator's file again. My tow company was doing about $340,000 in gross revenue with $118,000 in net profit last tax year. My wife made $52,000 a year as an office administrator. I had paid cash for the Mercedes from a commercial land sale that closed 4 months before our wedding, and I had the settlement statement and the deposit ticket to prove it. She told me Texas is a community property state, but not every dollar in the house is community. My premarital land sale that funded the Mercedes was separate property. The house was premarital and deeded in my name alone, also separate. The tow truck company had been started 4 years before the wedding, which made the value on the date of the marriage separate, with only the increase since the wedding being community. In Texas, a judge does not have to split community property down the middle. A judge can award a just and right division, and fault in the breakup of the marriage is one of the factors. Photographs of her with him, her own voice confessing 6 months of the affair, her own voice saying she was saving money to file first. That was fault on a platter. She made one note about the voice-activated recorder. We would not try to introduce the full audio at trial. Texas one-party consent is gray when the recorder is not a participant. We would use the transcript in deposition and settlement negotiations, where admissibility rules do not bind. That was plenty. Her strategy: file citing insupportability and adultery, move for a disproportionate share based on fault, serve her at her office parking lot, notice her deposition for 41 days out. Her retainer was $7,500. I put $7,500 on a card. She filed at 8:45 a.m. on a morning 18 days after I walked out of her office. My wife was served in the parking lot of her office building at 5:12 p.m. by a process server I never met. I was on a tow call 47 miles away when the server sent my attorney the affidavit of service. My wife called me 13 times that evening. She left 2 voicemails. She went to her mother's house and cried for 2 days. I stayed at my cousin's place the same 2 days. Her attorney turned out to be a guy mine had gone up against twice before. He was good, but he was not good enough to unring what was on my thumb drive. His opening letter tried to sell us on a 55-45 split, full retention of her retirement, and 24 months of contractual alimony because of the stress of the incident last fall. My attorney sent back a letter referencing the investigator's notarized report, the voice-activated transcript, and Texas law on fault in the just and right division. His next letter dropped the alimony. The one after that dropped her side to a 50-50 split of only the community portion of the business. His fourth letter offered to waive all claims to my business in exchange for 45% of the liquid community accounts. My attorney did not answer the fourth letter. She had already noticed my wife's deposition for 41 days after filing. 7 hours of sworn questioning at my attorney's firm, transcribed by a court reporter. My wife showed up in a navy dress with her mother in the waiting room. My attorney put the voice-activated transcript on a table in front of her during the 3rd hour. She asked my wife to read it aloud for the record. My wife started crying on page 2. Her own attorney asked for a 20-minute break. They came back with a settlement offer inside of an hour, 65-35 in my favor on all community property, full retention of my business with 0 claim against the increase in value, full retention of the Mercedes and the house as my separate property. She paid 100% of her own legal fees, no alimony. Her attorney had not even tried after the second letter. She signed the stipulated agreement in the same conference room 3 hours later. Texas Family Court accepted it 19 days after that at a 10-minute prove-up hearing. She did not appear. I stood in front of the judge alone. He asked 3 yes or no questions, signed the final decree, and wished me luck. The final decree gave me the Mercedes outright. I left it parked in my company yard for 6 more months before I traded it in for a new flatbed for my business. I did not want to look at the back seat where she had taken the barrette off her head and set it on the console for another man. The guy from the Mercedes moved away from town inside of 3 months. His own wife, I found out later from the investigator I had used, had filed for her own divorce 9 days after mine went final. Once she saw the same pictures I had, the investigator had sold her the same photo package for $600. I finished my 24 weeks of anger management a year to the month after the judge signed the plea. The counselor told me I was the calmest student he had ever had in his program. I told him it was because I had seen the other side of the thing he was trying to keep me from becoming. My ex-wife moved in with her mother and took a second job waiting tables at a steakhouse. Last I heard, she was still there. I sold the house 11 months after the divorce. Too many memories in it for me. I bought a smaller place on a few acres outside of town and put a kennel out back for 2 hunting dogs I picked up from a breeder. I put a rocking chair on the front porch that fits one man, a beer, and a sunset. That has worked out for me just fine. Every once in a while, when a 3 a.m. tow call comes across dispatch for a disabled Mercedes on a quiet stretch of Texas road, I hand it off to the other driver on rotation. I do not ever want to pull up to that scene twice in one life.